Let's bring in Peter Schrager, co-host of NFL Network's Good Morning Football. This is why we don't get nominated for a sports Emmy. Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
no, morbid, yet I really can empathize doing the morning show for so long. It'd be like Franco Harris died, and the first question is like, how many minutes are we giving Franco Harris's death? And it's, well, an NFL owner died. All right, blow out the whole show. We're talking for 3 hours on the NFL Network about the legacy of this owner. It was like, all right, where do we put the obituary? Well, there was a game last night, so let's hope we're never doing any of those shows.
And do you see where he's got the sports Emmy over his shoulder,
Right over my
strategically
shoulder.
placed?
That was it.
Right in our
Show you.
face.
Brought it
Wow.
out. Cobwebs were on it. Brought it out.
Yeah,
So
okay.
like this-
All right. Good for you. Congratulations. Peter Schrager, NFL Network host and part of NFL Network's on-location coverage of the NFL Draft in Detroit starting April 25th. All right. You got a mock draft here. Explain to the audience why your mock draft is different than most mock drafts.
Okay, I only do 2 mock drafts, and I come at it, and I always say this: no one cares who the hell I would take if I was the GM of the Titans, or if I'm the Saints here. Here's where I'm. No one cares. Literally, not one person cares. And if you're making a mock draft, no one cares who you think either. I try to come at it and say I'm on the phone with GMs and coaches throughout the last 2 weeks, trying to do the best job here and putting together a list of how I think it might go. After I released a mock draft, which was yesterday, I think get a lot more feedback. And in the day of the draft, I'll put together an official final one. But I had some curveballs that generated a lot of responses. And that's kind of the part of this exercise. And I take a lot of pride in it that people respond to it the way they do.
Okay. The reaction you got, you don't have to name the team or the coach, where he might have been disappointed that you took some information and put it out there, or you were completely off. Did you hear from any of your friends yesterday?
No, they don't like it when you're on. They're fine when you're off. They don't like it when you're on and they say, okay, well, what, like, dude, we had that conversation. You don't put that in your mock draft. So it's those. There were a certain coach of the Rams has never had a first round pick in his entire tenure with the Rams. And I put in the mock draft, I will go on the record and guarantee that pick will be an offensive player. Like, there's no way McVay's coming out there and drafting a safety with his first pick. He has an offensive mind. And he texted me at about 4 a.m. this morning and is like, you're putting a guarantee that I'm going to take an offensive player? And I wrote back, yes, you will take an offensive player. I'll see you night 1 after you take an offensive player. So a lot of this stuff is just friendly banter, but I had a trade up for the Giants to number 4 to get JJ McCarthy. And a lot of other teams, oddly enough, reached out and said, is that from Joe Shane? Is that from Brian Dable? Is that you speculating? So I think that McCarthy pick and where he ends up is very intriguing to a lot of other coaches.
Okay. How many teams are truly interested? I don't understand the J.J. McCarthy fan fest here, but it seems to be real that he's going to be a top 5 pick. How many teams are interested in J.J. McCarthy?
I could tell you I would say that there are 3 different quarterback needy teams in this draft, the usual suspects, who were very active on text chain yesterday about me going and putting him on the Giants. You can guess those teams. I won't list them, but it's one of those where, so you really don't think he'll be around at spot XYZ.
So the Viking, you can nod your head, like Vikings, Raiders. I would say the Giants are going to be in there as well. Maybe there's an outlier.
I think the 12th pick with the Broncos, they're interested in seeing which quarterbacks go. Look, if all 4 of those quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, we know Arizona's not making the pick at 4. They have Kyler Murray. That means someone felt the pressure or the need to move up to get one. And then if they don't get him at 4 and Arizona stays put and gets Marvin Harrison, then that Chargers pick at 5 becomes a feeding frenzy and they might be willing to trade back. So it's interesting. Minnesota is a wild one because they got that 23rd overall pick also. And the conventional thinking was, you package 11 and 23 and you move up to 4 or 5. That's great. They also have a ton of future first round picks. They've got a ton of picks in this draft. It all sounds great. But if you're Arizona or the Chargers and you're looking to move back, going all the way back to 11 probably crosses you off on guys like Harrison and Adunze and Neighbors and gets you out of that contention. However, the Giants at 6, you can move back 2 spots if you're Arizona and still get one of the top receivers in this
Yeah.
draft, if not your favorite receiver in this draft, which makes the Giants, if they're really interested in getting McCarthy, the spot that I have them going and being the team that's going to make the move.
I mentioned this to the Danettes recently, that now is the real time with the draft where you get all your scouts, everybody kind of comes back, and it's quiet. Like, you don't hear much information. This is when real decisions are made. The other stuff, when we're speculating, and in January we're talking about, where's Michael Penix going?
Yeah.
This is when it's real. And this is where you're trying to sort through is somebody telling you the truth? Do you have friends in the business who might lie to you? Or how about I say this? They don't tell you the truth.
We've got a lot of teams that tell me the truth, and I really value that, and it goes a long way. And those years of relationships, and they understand that if they're telling me that it's okay for me to put in the mock draft, and it's fine. I've had multiple coaches tell me something that the day before they're going to pick this guy if he's on the board, and they take someone else, and I'll say something the next day, and inevitably wasn't my call. GM, made that one in the end. It would have been my pick. So everyone's got to cover. But the truth of the matter is there are smoke screens. I would like to think I've got enough years and enough credibility where I'm not going to be used as some pawn by a team. And I also don't think my mock draft isn't going to change everyone's boards. I had a really interesting conversation with a head coach last night, and he said, right now in the process, and you nailed it, Dan, we have our verticals, which means, all right, here's how we rank our quarterbacks. Here's how we rank our running backs. Here's how we rank our wide receivers. Our next step, which is the next few days, is our horizontals, which means, okay, we love this offensive tackle, but do we love him more than the third wide receiver? That's when you start comparing players from different position groups. So a lot of teams haven't even gone through that exercise yet, which makes a mock draft a guess, a simulation, an estimation. And then I would think a couple days before, like I've had some really accurate mock drafts in the past. I would say Daniel Jeremiah last year, and not to promote someone other than myself, because at this point in my career, I'd like to promote myself. But I would say Daniel Jeremiah had at number 2, the Texans taking CJ Stroud. And then at number 3, the Texans trading up from like 11 to 3 and taking Will Anderson. And I said, dude, that's incredible intel. And after the fact, he was like, I was given an indication it might happen. I went with it. And I'm like, those are the ones where it's a real pat on the back. When you could project trades and get it right and nail it and get the guys, that's impressive.
Talking to Peter Schrager, NFL Network. He'll be part of the coverage, NFL Network on location of the draft in Detroit, April 25th through the 27th. I don't know if the Patriots have learned from Mac Jones, that situation, that experiment. Do you draft your franchise quarterback and then you start to build around him, or do you try to build something and then bring in your quarterback so he's not empty-handed like Mac Jones pretty much was in New England? You got him taking Drake May. They don't have the infrastructure there on that team where he's going to get thrown in and all of a sudden we're going to go, Drake May is not ready to play.
It's a huge uphill battle for whoever that first round pick is. If it's a wide receiver, you're saying, well, then Jacoby Brissett's going to be throwing to him. And that's nothing against Jacoby, but that's not the future of the franchise. They have issues on their roster, holes everywhere, and trade back does sound to make sense. But then you start thinking, how often do we anticipate to have a top 5 pick at quarterback? If you're comfortable enough with May and you like it, which I think they are, I think that's the pick. I would say I'm 80% confident they'll go quarterback there and they're not going to trade out. And I think Daniels goes 2 to the Commanders, and I think the Patriots take Drake May. I know they had a really good dinner with Drake May. This sounds silly, but like they had like an hours and hours long dinner at Davios in Patriot Place, which is right there in Foxborough, like steaks, the whole thing. And I've gotten to know these prospects a little bit. I've spoken to a lot of coaches who've interviewed these prospects. Like they're all very unique in their own ways. Drake May is that Southern boy who's just a good time, 21 years old, country strong, huge arm. He's got years to go before he's a polished product, which is why a lot of those Josh Allen comparisons are made. I don't think it's fair to Drake May. Josh Allen is like one of the best of his generation. We don't know if that's Drake May yet, but with so much youth and so much raw ability and the size 6'4", and the basketball background, the whole thing. If you're comfortable with him at 3, like there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, yes, you take him at 3. And I think in that building, when you have so many needs, take the quarterback.
I still get the feeling that Sean McVay is going to take quarterback.
Go on.
Like, I could see Michael Penix. I don't know. It just feels like, or Bo Nix. I don't know why. But the thought doesn't go away that Sean's going to look at, Matt's successor.
They took obviously Stetson Bennett in the 4th round last year. That hasn't worked out, and we wish Stetson well, whatever he's going through. I'm not sure all the details on it, but obviously he had some stuff last year, and then they've rotated around who is going to be the backup. They brought in Wentz. They had that going for a while. That spot 19 where they're at, Bo Nix might be on the board. Michael Penix might be on the board. Spencer Rattler might be on the board. I'll just say this again. I'll say it to you. Sean McVay is not taking an inside linebacker at 19. Like, he's an offensive wizard, and he's never had the opportunity to draft a guy in the 1st round. If there is a stud wideout that slips, if there's a wideout that he likes, like if he likes Ladd McConkey, and I don't know if he does, but if he likes, Ricky Pearsall, if he sees Keon Coleman, like I think Sean's going to say to them, guys, I've never made a 1st round pick. I'm taking my guy. And if that's a quarterback, it'll be a quarterback. I think offense for the Rams. And you got me thinking there with the eventual successor to Matthew Stafford.
I don't know, man. I love Penix. But then I could see Sean saying with Bo Nix, man, I can bring him in, and I got a guy similar to Stafford.
Accurate as hell.
Yeah.
Big.
I don't know. I get that
Penix is interesting. So I didn't have Penix in my 1st round, and I've gotten a lot of blowback. And by the time I do it next week, based on the response, I will have Penix in the 1st round. He's a 1st round quarterback. I thought he might be like that Will Levis situation.
Yeah, but who's giving you blowback?
Teams that are in the late 20s, or teams that have potential quarterback needs, who said they would expect there would be a trade up into the 1st round if he falls out of the top 20. He's not going to fall to day 2.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. There's 2 teams though that I continue to hear for Penix, and I didn't have him in my 1st round. One of them was the Vegas Raiders. Apparently there's a lot of fans in the building. I speak to sources there that I haven't gotten that indication, but from other people I've heard that. And then the other one is the Seattle Seahawks as a successor to Geno Smith. Obviously the Washington connection, but also the offensive coordinator there knows Penix. So those are the 2 teams I was told for Penix, and I don't have him going anywhere in the 1st round. So it just shows how wildly different the thought process could be 10 days out.
And all it takes is one team.
Yeah.
To go.
Tim Tebow got drafted in the 1st round.
Yes. You have one team that gets squirrely, and all of a sudden it changes, where people go, wait, what happened? Who'd they take? Now all of a sudden, you hit reset, and you're like, wait, hold a minute. That person's
There's been
available.
A few of those.
Yeah.
I remember when Joe Flacco went like 18th to the Ravens out of Delaware. I remember being Radio City Music Hall and everyone looking around me like, really? I'm like, okay, all right. It's all it takes is one team. If you take them, and you go from there. But, remember the Broncos traded back into the 1st round to take Paxton Lynch. We were all like, all right.
Yeah. Give me the wildest rumor you're hearing.
Good one. The wildest rumor. I would think actually involves Washington at 2. And the wildest rumor is that they pass on quarterback because they have 6 picks in the top 100. And Adam Peters, how they did it in San Francisco, was you lock up and solidify all the other positions. Then you get on a cheap contract a quarterback that you like in the 2nd round, the 3rd round, or whatever. And I would say that's a wild rumor, and it's possible, and that's a philosophy, and say, okay, you draft stud wide receiver at 2 overall. You get Harrison, you get a stud, defensive whatever you want to do. You trade back, whatever it is. The issue is Marcus Mariota is their starting quarterback right now. And they're not going into the season with the number 2 overall pick with Marcus Mariota as their starting quarterback and no blue chip guy behind him. So that's been the wildest rumor, and that kind of died down. But there was a while there where people were like, I could see Washington with Bob Myers and all these outside the box thinkers saying, look at what San Francisco did with Brock Purdy. Adam Peters says he can replicate that. Just give me a quarterback who runs the system and we can build up. But I don't know. I feel like Jaden Daniels or Drake May will be the pick, and I have Jaden Daniels going 2 overall.
You're guaranteeing that Caleb Williams goes number 1 to the Bears?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that people have tried to add a little fire to this. Yeah. I felt all along that Chicago was getting rid of Fields and they were taking Caleb Williams. That there was nothing that was going to alter that. I don't know if anybody made any kind of draft day package to go, hey, we're going to give you this. If this is the next Patrick Mahomes, I was surprised nobody said, we want to go up and get him.
Even if they did, once you trade Fields for what they traded Fields for, I think it's done. I mean, that's it. Like, you're just gonna say, okay, there's nothing that can entice us. I don't care if it's 7 first-round picks. Like, we have our guy. We're going all in. We already traded Justin, and we go from there. They've had 3 great meetings with him. First one was at the Combine, which is kind of like your first get to know you. Second one in LA, they took him out to dinner out in LA, and it was an awesome night. And they went to this like private dinner club called Bird Streets, which you have to be a member of. And the Bears got in, and they took Caleb, and like Jamie Foxx was at the next table, and Caleb was great, not over the top, but just comfortable. And then in Lake Forest, they took him out, not in Chicago, but Lake Forest, where the facility is, and they brought members of the team to be there at the dinner, and Caleb was amazing. So they've had great interactions with Caleb, and he's been awesome. So I think that's a sure thing.
We'll talk to you next week. Thank you. Good to talk to you, buddy. That's Peter Schrager, NFL Network, part of NFL Network Draft Days coverage, the 25th, 26th, 27th from Detroit.